So more of the incident HIV cases will come back to the STD-DIS. We had instituted field-based testing and treatment back in about 2002, 2003, somewhere in there. And at the time, there was very little HIV for us to work on. There was almost no syphilis in Alaska. And so primarily we worked on chlamydia and gonorrhea and did partner services. We worked with people who were doing some DIS activities out of other agencies, and we to try to clean up some of the J's we were getting from CT and GC contacts. We started doing urine aptamas in the field and treating with Zithromax, and at the time, I believe it was Cipro. Over the years, we kind of morphed into using the Cefixime suspension when that became available, and then later on adopted the Cefixime tablets. More recently, we've been adopting additional technologies for testing. And part of it is driven just, number one, by the new technologies becoming available that make it easy to integrate into field work. Number two, shifting of funds, which kind of shift our priorities and obligate us to additional activities. And also as an emphasis on program integration and creating a single point of care as we have in STDs, HIV, hepatitis. We have significant overlap in our clientele. A few years ago, the State Public Health Lab had validated self-collected vaginal swabs for CT and GC, also validated oral pharyngeal swabs and the use of rectal swabs. So as we've gone on, we've been adopting everything that's becoming available, and this has really increased our ability to provide services or adequate services to especially men who have sex with men. In our area, many providers don't collect any kind of extra urogenital from urogenital sites, and many don't ask about sexual practices. And so when we're out there notifying people of their exposures and their risks, we're able to use the urine technology. We do the oral pharyngeal swabs. We have them self-collect for rectal swabs, and there's also the availability of the self-collected vaginal swabs. We've expanded to include HIV rapid testing. We've expanded as our syphilis rates are going up. We've retrained everyone on venipuncture, so we can do syphilis testing out there. And the latest technology that's come along that our health department received quite a few basically free rapid tests for hepatitis C. So we've expanded and expanded, and we've had to set priorities. Basically, the DIS are responsible for number one priorities is all the HIV, syphilis, and gonorrhea. After that, we take care of all untreated chlamydia, and we will follow and interview anyone with chlamydia-related PID, anyone with STDs who is pregnant, and after that, pretty much people who have had multiple infections. So we're not interviewing all chlamydias anymore, and we just don't have the resources to do that. So we keep shifting our priorities to accommodate our latest outbreaks and trends. One of the benefits, like I mentioned before, we had started the field-based testing and treatment as a way of cleaning up all these J's, these refusals for treatment. And over the years, we've expanded that because, for one thing, local capacity has decreased for doing STD clinical services. Our local clinic, the reproductive health clinic, which is run by the Municipality of Anchorage Health Department, they've been going through a lot of difficulties financially, and they did have to institute fee-for-service, sliding fee scale, and so far this year they've seen 800 fewer clients than normal. So we've been picking up the slack, I think, with decreased services in the area. Let's see. We also had one of our services through our surveillance program is we check on every single report that comes in the state of Alaska. We check with the provider to make sure that the patient has been treated, and if there is no documentation or there is or they indicate that they didn't find the patient for follow-up, we go out, our DIS go out, and we either get them back into their clinic or we treat them in the field. As we've contacted people over the years, we've found a significant amount of people of our patients who don't go and get their prescription filled for many reasons. And some who, the prescription is filled and it's waiting for them at the pharmacy and they've got Medicare or whatever that can pay for it, they still don't go down and pick it up. So we've been kind of cleaning that part of our population up a little bit. Also, we found that a lot of young women, when we contact them, they report that they threw up the meds and they never told their doctor. So we're out there doing the retreatment.
Hi, I don't mean to interrupt, but we're from Detroit, and it went out, and we couldn't hear anything, and we had to call back in twice. Hello?
Dana, can you take that?
Can you hear now?
Right, we can hear now. We just got back into the call.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see. Actually, we've had a lot of success with the field-based testing and treatment, and it's meant a big expansion of our DIS activities. We're often able to test and treat people a lot quicker than if we were referring them into facilities and where they sometimes miss appointments or don't tell the physician what they're there for and those kinds of things. And that we can still offer these services for free is a major selling point because nobody else can do that right now. And as long as we're testing and treating, it I think develops a kind of trust by the patient, so that I think our follow-up on their cases, our partner services, is more effective. So that's about it for our DIS program in Alaska. We have the 4.5 people who have been here for many years, and people who have been DIS for many, many years, decades even. I know that's not always the case in some jurisdictions that, and I've long been concerned with the rate of turnover among DIS in the country. And this got me thinking about investing in our workforce, and which is the topic that I suggested for the NCSD annual meeting, and so kind of got volunteered into leading that discussion. But something I've been thinking about for a very long time, and I'm thinking that it's a real difference. There's some real fundamental differences between longevity of DIS versus longevity of STD directors and public health advisors who a lot of us have been around for decades and decades. And in trying to think out what some of the differences are, I mean, of course, we talk a lot about the stress that DIS are under and the in some areas a lack of pay, and but I think there's two fundamental differences between the DIS part of our public health workforce and the rest of us in the public health workforce. And one issue, I think, is invisibility, and the other, I think, is isolation. STD directors, we have NCSD that unites us, and those of us who are active in it gain a lot, I think, personally and professionally from being involved in NCSD. Public health advisors have the Watsonian Society, and even DSTDP personnel have a softball team. And I think it's something that there's something very fundamental in this kind of invisibility and isolation of DIS that may be contributing to the high turnover. And when I think about investing in our public health infrastructure, investing in our workforce, investing in our personnel, I think there are some steps that we can take or encourage that may help to counter some of that and may give DIS a renewed sense of self-worth, I think. At the local state levels, I think we can work to be very supportive supervisors and to advocate for our DIS, providing good management. I see part of my role as a supervisor as a kind of buffer between the DIS who are out there doing this incredibly hard work and the institutional politics and administrative BS at times. I see that as part of my role is to shield workers from as much of that kind of stuff as I can. In terms of helping DIS to fight this isolation, I think one of the things we can do is to encourage DIS to become associate members of NCSD to start a process of connection. At the national level, CDC is working towards a certification kind of program for DIS that would standardize the workforce and I think also bring some sense of worth and value to the DIS workforce. We've started with DIS Recognition Day and other events, and I think I think we've got bragging rights on our DIS, and I think they have a lot to brag about too. And the last thing that was on my mind was maybe for us at NCSD to sponsor a kind of national network for DIS, whether it's a web page or some kind of forum for DIS to organize and to have the kind of national camaraderie and sense of mission and all the things that go with it that keep us doing what we're doing. A web page could have, everybody's war stories or job announcements or some way to connect people to fight the invisibility and isolation. So that was my whole motive in doing this.
Great, Donna. Thank you so much. So hold those good thoughts because I'm sure there are going to be some questions afterward. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Jennifer Vandevelde, STD Section Chief in Kansas.
Hi, everybody. It is afternoon in Kansas, and we are not 0 degrees, but we are still pretty chilly. So to get started, I just kind of wanted to give everybody an overview of the STD program in Kansas. Kansas itself has 105 counties. Our estimated 2011 population was about 2,900,000. During calendar year 2012, we anticipate having about 11,000 cases of chlamydia, about 3,000 cases of gonorrhea, about 60 cases of early syphilis, about 20 of those being primary and secondary, and about 125 new cases of HIV. The STD and HIV programs in Kansas have gone through several organizational iterations on paper, but in reality the services for the two programs have always been integrated basically since the inception of the HIV program. We currently have 10 DIS, 1 reactor desk analyst, 1 infertility coordinator, a central office staff, a deputy director, and myself. Of the 10 DIS, 5 are state DIS, and 5 are county DIS that are contractually funded, at least partially, from our CSPS grant or state funds. All of our DIS are geographically distributed in areas of highest morbidity. Collectively, our program functions are funded by the CSPS and IPP grants, the HIV prevention grant, as well as state funding. Currently, HIV prevention fully funds 1 DIS position, and they contribute to the contracts for our county DIS as well.
Jennifer?
Yes?
Can I just stop you and say, I'm hearing a little background noise, so if everyone can please remember to *6 to mute your phone.
Thanks, Dana. So year-to-date for calendar 2012, year-to-date for calendar year 2012, our contact index for syphilis and HIV has been 3.5 and 2.7 respectively. Our cluster indices for this year has been 6.2 for syphilis and 1.5 for HIV. Kansas does traditional partner services, and we're pretty successful at it, and we historically have been. All of our DIS are required to both draw blood and be able to perform HIV rapid tests in the field. And most of our DIS in metropolitan areas can deliver medications in the field through a process that we call DIS delivered therapy, which is pretty similar to what Donna described. So the question at hand is the changing role of DIS in Kansas. And we are pretty acutely aware that the role of the DIS has to change. Dr. Boland has made it pretty clear. Funding changes have made it pretty clear that that has to happen. So the question for us really has been, in what way should the role of the DIS change? And we've tried to be really deliberate and thoughtful, pragmatic in the changes that we've implemented. We want to ensure that the changes have a positive outcome for clients as well as for us as a program, and really cement the importance of DIS. So to that end, we have begun the process of changing our traditional disease intervention specialist, or DIS, to behavioral intervention specialists, or BIS. So DIS typically talk with people at a pretty pivotal moment, right? Either after a positive test for an STD or after an exposure to an STD, which means that we not only identify very high-risk individuals, but we also talk to them at a moment in their lives when they may be deciding to make some changes in their behavior, or at the very least, they're probably more open to considering changes in their behavior. So we decided to implement the RESPECT intervention as part of our Partner Services program. So our DIS in Wyandotte County, which is Kansas City, Kansas, the KC metro area that we share with Missouri, they've been piloting the RESPECT intervention as part of their STD clinic for quite some time, and they've had a really good experience with the outcomes. They've seen fewer repeat clients and fewer folks who previously tested positive for syphilis coming back for HIV, or who tested positive for gonorrhea coming back for syphilis or HIV, which obviously is our goal. So we just trained all of our staff a few weeks ago in the RESPECT intervention, and we're currently in the process of determining which of our patients are best suited to receive the intervention where it's going to make the most difference. We are collaborating with our illustrious epidemiological services staff here at the Kansas Department of Health and Environment so that we can produce some good data on the effectiveness of this approach of combining the RESPECT intervention in with the Partner Services program. So that's probably the largest way in which we have evolved the role of DIS in Kansas. Another way that we've done that is really by continually integrating new technologies into our Partner Services. I think a lot of the internet-based Partner Services information is targeted at pretty large areas that have specific Internet Partner Services programs. And obviously in Kansas, just resource-wise, that's not an option for us. But we have taken that and kind of morphed it a little bit, and we've really focused on using websites and on using apps to find more contacts and to get more contacts tested and treated. And we have found that to be extremely successful. All of our state DIS currently have iPhones so that they can not only find partners using those apps, but actually start the apps during an investigation so that the client can help us find their partners on those apps. We just had a small cluster of syphilis cases in north central Kansas, which for those of you not familiar with Kansas is a pretty rural area. It's not Kansas City, it's not Wichita, it's a pretty rural area. And we found a total of 26 cases in the cluster, and the crux of that outbreak was based on a contact that we only had app-based information on. So the proficiency of our DIS in using those apps really led us to find an additional 24 cases. So I would say that's the other way in which we've really focused on changing what they do. I think the core of what DIS do should stay the same, and in Kansas it has for the most part. But I think we can add things and we can sort of tweak what they're doing to go along with what makes the most sense in our state, and that's what we're trying to do here. Some of the challenges that we ran into is just balancing time between the behavioral interventions and the Partner Services intervention. So, if you add RESPECT, you have to take something else away. And our kind of obvious choice for that was chlamydia interviews. We have, as I said, about 60 cases of syphilis and about 125 of HIV. So we have a significant amount for 10 people. We did do some chlamydia interviews, and we're going to do away with those completely probably so that we can institute the RESPECT intervention. The other challenge that we had, I think, was a perception that we were going to have difficulty selling the RESPECT intervention to our staff. And that turned out not to be true. So that's one of our successes as well, is that we thought this was going to be a really tough sell to them, and they all went, well, yeah, we should absolutely be doing that. So that was kind of a nice surprise. The biggest challenge we had, quite frankly, was getting the training. The RESPECT intervention is the training itself is put on by the Denver Prevention Training Center, which is fantastic. It's put on by the HIV side of that, or a couple of years ago what was the HIV side of that. And initially when we asked about the training several years ago, we had some difficulty getting it because DIS weren't a priority. Our training is done through the other side, the STD side of that, and they didn't do respect training. So there were some logistical issues in getting that done. Our partners in HIV prevention played a huge role in finally getting us that training so that we could implement it. So some of the successes of Respect so far is, as I said, the staff have been incredibly positive about the changes. We've got the training completed. They're kind of practicing right now, and we are working with our EPI program to set up doing some evaluation once we fully implement it. And I think the biggest success for us in this is that we've added a component to partner services that I think at least is going to be extremely effective in changing behavior. Respect by itself has been shown effective, so I'm confident that combining it with partner services is a good move. So we're working on that. But most importantly, it doesn't water down what the DIS do. They're still going to do traditional partner services. This is just something that we're sort of tacking on to make it better, faster, more efficient. One of the things that we learned, I think, early on with this is that we wanted to be really upfront with our staff about why we were making these changes. The DIS have a vested interest in making sure that they're around. And so while it's a touchy subject to broach, and there was a lot of discussion about whether or not partner services would stay or go and how their roles should change, and that's difficult to talk about with staff. But it was an important part of getting buy-in and figuring out how this intervention was going to fit into partner services. Our staff played a critical role in helping us determine how that was going to happen, and we absolutely couldn't have done it without them. It really had to be a team effort. The other thing is partner, 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 especially with your HIV program. We have had, as I said before, an integrated program early on with our HIV program, but even closer relations were really required to get this undertaken and to get it on its way. So we also couldn't have done it without our HIV program. So that's us in a nutshell. I'll turn it back over to Dana.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think that's quite a bit. Really great work going on there. So now I'm going to open it up for any questions or comments from the folks on the line who are interested in speaking with Jennifer or Donna.
Hi, this is Rebecca in Colorado. I am curious both to Jennifer and Donna, from where do you get the support for the STD treatment drugs that are delivered by the DIS?
Well, this is Jennifer. Our medications are paid for with state general fund dollars. So our state supplies medications to all of our infertility sites currently.
Yeah, this is Donna. So far we have been using a portion of IPP funds for treatment. It's a very small amount, and that'll be going away, so we're going to have to kind of regroup and figure out what we can use, probably state general funds. The medications aren't very expensive, so we're not worried about that. And at times when we've had kind of end of the year extra pot of money, we've stocked up. So we have a EPI pharmacy that holds onto the medications for us.
So with the IPP, are you purchasing them through 340B pricing?
Yes.
This is Jennifer. We're actually not. Everything that we have is generic at this point. And so we purchase off of the MMCAP, which I cannot remember what that stands for. It's Minnesota
Multi-state, yeah, the Minnesota multi-state.
But at this point, everything's generic, so it's not a huge expense. Now, if gonorrhea obviously becomes resistant, it's going to be an issue then. But as of right now, it's a pretty small amount of money.
Yeah, we're kind of exploring the options because we want to phase out the use of Cefixime in the field. Because we'll be recommending that for the rest of the state. And so we've talked about, what do we do then with field-based treatment of GC, and we've tossed around ideas of having people come in here to the office, and we have a whole bunch of really great epi nurses across the hall from us who work in infectious diseases and chronic diseases, and maybe having them come over and deliver the shots.
Thanks, Rebecca. Great question.
Hi. My name is Kim Austin. I'm in Tennessee, and my question is for both of the speakers or either one. Are your DIS, do they have a nursing background? Do some of them have it, or a majority, or what's the makeup?
This is Donna. No, we do not have any nurses on staff. We only have one person who was a medic back in the Navy years and years ago and was a nurse during that time. But we operate on standing orders by the state epidemiologist, who's a physician.
And this is Jennifer. We have one who's a nurse and one who works preventative med in the military. But our DIS function under standing orders from the county health officers. So the county health officer has to actually create the protocol and the standing order, and then they operate under that.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Who else has a question?
Hi, this is Bernard from South Carolina. I had to step away for a minute, but we're talking about DIS and operating under standing orders and stuff. So in some of the jurisdictions, DIS actually do treat based on standing orders?
This is Jennifer. Our DIS don't treat; they deliver medications, and there is I have come to learn is a huge difference in those two things. So the provider under the standing order prescribes the medication to the patient, and then the DIS just picks it up and delivers it, much like a delivery person at Walgreens would do.
Deliver it to the provider?
No, they deliver it to the patient.
This is IM medicine or PO?
PO. Only PO.
Oh. And most of the patients are compliant with taking the medication for the full duration?
The only medications that we allow to be used under DIS-delivered therapy are single-dose therapies, okay. So cefixime and azithromycin. If the patient is allergic or has any other health condition that would preclude them from having one of those medications, then they have to come into the clinic. Okay. And I should mention, we use DIS-delivered therapy as kind of a last resort. It's not our standard operating procedure. It's for clients who can't or won't come in, or who, for whatever reason, can't come in during clinic hours, don't have transportation, that kind of stuff. So it is just a last resort. It's not our standard operating procedure.
Okay, I got you now. So it's for non-syphilitic treatments.
Oh my, yes, we don't do syphilis in the field.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I stepped away for a minute. I came back and I'm like, what?
Bernard, we're not that crazy in Kansas. Come on.
Yeah, we haven't had any issue between deliver versus administrate. The standing orders are the same, and I guess you could look at it as delivering, but we do directly observe therapy. So they take the medicine right in front of us.
Right.
Great. Is that the same for you, Jennifer?
Yes, it is. They take it in front of us.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, Greg Stevenson at our Wyandotte County Health Department, who a lot of you know, he kind of initiated the idea, and Wyandotte County DIS initiated it, and they compared it to directly observed therapy for tuberculosis.
Right.
So we take medications to them, and we watch them take those, and TB meds certainly have way more side effects and contraindications than azithromycin and cefixime. So that was a nice way to look at it, was, we're doing the same thing, but with a much easier medication to tolerate.
Absolutely. Right. Great question. Who else has a question for Jennifer or Donna?
This is Mark Alvin, Washington State. Could you tell me what percentage of your cases are done over the phone, either of you, versus in person?
Oh, this is Jennifer. Our syphilis and HIV cases are required to be done in person. On a very rare occasion will we do one over the phone. Our chlamydia and gonorrhea, we actually encourage our DIS to do phone interviews just to save resources more than anything else, both their time and our money in their travel. And we probably have about a 60% phone interview rate for chlamydia and gonorrhea.
Yeah, I'll leave it to you, Mark, to ask a difficult question for which I have no data. We too encourage definitely syphilis and HIV. We try to do in person, but with the vast distances here in Alaska, we are sometimes forced to basically do things over the phone. We are trying to do more and more of the chlamydia and GC interviewing over the phone. It's cheaper and quicker, and as long as the DIS is still effective over the phone, it's the way to go.
This is Rebecca in Colorado again. I have to ask. Do either of your programs have any particular special effort or program procedure for how you address persons who are previously known to be HIV infected and get subsequent sexually transmitted infections?
Well, this is Jennifer in Kansas. We do. It used to be something that the DIS took on themselves, and we would go out and we would talk to them, and we would make sure they knew about the law, and we would check to see if they were in services. And we have CRCS in Kansas, the Comprehensive Risk Counseling Services. So we have a master social worker who deals with HIV positive, high-risk individuals, and we have turned that over to her. So now when we get somebody, either someone calls in a complaint about a sex partner who's exposed to them, or we have someone who's HIV positive with a subsequent STD, is we turn that information over to her and she deals with them directly. It occurred to us that a social worker is probably much better equipped to do that than a DIS. And while some of our DIS are social workers, not all of them are. And so this really gives the patient a much better service in that venue.
Yeah, here in Alaska, we that is kind of a special case. We don't have a whole lot of HIV in Alaska, but we're finding more and more of our syphilis cases and GC cases are co-infected with HIV. And we take it on a case-by-case basis. A lot of those are referred over to Melissa, who does the majority of the work on people with HIV, and also doing the linkage to care. If a particular DIS had success in an earlier interview with the HIV, we might set that DIS up again to work with this patient around the STD and the HIV and about changing behaviors. We have a number of DIS. Most of our DIS actually have quite a bit of experience with what we used to call recalcitrants, and are very effective with them.
Thank you.
This is Bernard in South Carolina again. So with the recalcitrant individuals, you all do write them up as a case, perhaps a case of 901 or something like that, or you just make the referral? And when I say write them up as a case, I mean interview them and then notify the identified partners.
Right. They're always interviewed, and we definitely notify the partners.
Ours is, whether or not we write them up is on a case-by-case basis. It just kind of depends. If it's a chlamydia case, they may not get interviewed. It just depends on the workload of the DIS at the time. But they're always referred to the CRCS counselor, and she does that as well.
Jennifer, Yes. This is Amy from Michigan, and I had a question about your process for integrating ReSPECT into the DIS interviews.
Yes.
And my question is, are you rolling that out simultaneously with all of your DIS, or did you do a pilot process, or how did you go about that?
Well, our DIS in Wyandotte County, which is Kansas City, they have integrated it into their clinic for quite some time, and so the DIS there have been doing it for a year or two at this point. I'm not entirely sure. But they've done it pretty seamlessly and had really good results. And so it was actually our lead DIS, Christina Van Cleve in Wyandotte County, who convinced me that this is something we should look at. And after investigating a little bit, I discovered that she was absolutely correct, and that it is a format that fits in very nicely with a partner services interview. Some of the components of the ReSPECT intervention are already components of the partner services interview. So it was a pretty seamless integration of the two. They've been doing it, like I said, for quite some time. Our staff have just been trained, and we have been talking to our EPI program about how, what data we want to collect and how we're going to do that. And we anticipate rolling it out with all of our DIS early in 2013.
Thank you.
Hi, Kelly from Michigan. I have two questions. First of all, you're talking about the self-collected rectal and vaginal swabs. Mm-hmm. How does that work? Do you have a target population? What kind of funding and what kind of morbidity do you see off of that? And then also, for the technology, when you're talking about the apps on the iPhone, what kind of apps? Were there like apps that were recommended, or how did the idea of that come about?
Okay, I'll take the first question. We have the capability of using the self-collected vaginal swabs. We do encounter every now and then a female client who just is not comfortable doing a urine sample. And so we send them into the bathroom, and we explain how to do it, and they bring it back. I would say it's used a lot more in some of the clinics in our area, and I'd say we probably get about the same positivity as we do. Well, actually, the study that our public health lab did showed that we were getting a higher positivity on the vaginal swabs than with the urine on females. We do the self-collected rectal swabs. Again, we send a person into the bathroom, and they collect the specimen and bring it back. And we've been finding some positivity on those too. I don't have any figures right now.
So as far as the apps go, we actually discovered the apps because our patients told us about it quite some time ago. And we have been kind of investigating which apps they're using, and we've been downloading them onto our iPhone so that we can use them. And recently, our HIV prevention director, Travis Barnhart, did a presentation for all of our staff at one of our quarterly staff meetings and gave us a little black book of gay hookup apps and sites. It's primarily gay hookups, but it's straight as well. And so I'm just going to list off for you the apps that he recommended we know. Scruff, Grindr, Adam for Adam, Manhunt, Growler, Jacked, Boy Ahoy, Mr., Plenty of Fish or POF, Gay.com, Bear411, Men for Sex Now, Squirt.org, and some of those are also websites. A lot of times we'll have companion apps, and they also have mobile sites. So keeping up with everything is difficult, and I think the first thing that he said when he presented us all this information was, as soon as I give you this, it's going to be out of date. So our staff have just been really good about notifying each other when patients come up with a new app or a new website that they've discovered during an interview. They're really good about notifying everybody or notifying us so we have information. I'm trying to encourage our HIV program to actually send out the little black book of apps that Travis did. And if that happens, we'll send it out to NCSD so they can send it to everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? What other questions for?
I do have a question. This is Yesenia from Colorado. My question is regarding the structure for promoting DIS? How do you compensate someone, or how do you promote someone from being an incoming DIS to those individuals who have maybe 10+ years conducting this type of work?
I think that's going to depend on the your local or state structure in terms of what kind of options you have. DIS work under a lot of different titles. Here they're called public health specialists, and they're on a merit increase salary format. There really isn't an opportunity to advance or to be promoted unless I leave and somebody wants to take my job. I'm not sure how to promote. I know in some jurisdictions you could be promoted from one class to another, and but it doesn't work that way here.
And this is Jennifer. We're in a very similar situation. I would like to set up so that we have kind of a career ladder for DIS. The problem is we don't have money to pay for it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the case in most places. Our two contractual county health departments at Wyandotte and Sedgwick County, they do have lead DIS. So there is some opportunity for promotion into those positions. But for the most part, there isn't any. What we have found, because I'm just going to brag on my staff real quick and just say that they're phenomenal right now. They just work and work and work and work, and they're pretty amazing. And I can't tell you exactly why they're that motivated, but they do a fantastic job. We spend a lot of time and effort in making sure that they get a lot of training and that they get, they have everything they need to do their jobs. And we make it a point as often as we can to let them know that they are the STD program. And I think they have really a phenomenal amount of pride in what they do and in our program. And that's the only thing that I can say to explain why we have such a great staff. We have folks who are fairly new. They've been here 1 or 2 years. We have some who've been here 10, 20 years plus. So aside from the fact that they are just genuinely amazing people, I honestly can't explain it to you because there isn't a whole lot of opportunity for promotion.
And Yesenia, I think your question really is the question of the day, month, maybe the question of the year as it relates to DIS, because that's certainly a question that a lot of project areas and jurisdictions have been thinking about as we promote, as Jennifer just said, the awesome skill sets of DIS. So an excellent question, right on time.
Yesenia, if you come up with something amazing, I would love to know.
I'll be sure to share.
Thank you.
So we're about to come to the end of our call, but before we do, I do have a couple of questions that I want to ask our two great presenters. The first one being, what directions do you envision for DIS staff moving forward? And then secondly, which would sort of be my little plug and little wrap-up, what do you think NCSD can do at the national level to sort of strengthen the DIS workforce?
This is Jennifer. I think the vision is pretty clear that there's going to have to be changes, like I said. I think it's really going to be, the onus is going to be on STD program directors to make sure that those changes are done in a way that holds harmless the core of what DIS do if that's appropriate for your area. I realize there are some places that may not be appropriate. For instance, in Kansas, with our contact and cluster indices, and we have an extremely high disease intervention index, I think it's extremely important that we retain traditional partner services. But I think it's really going to be at the behest of the STD program directors to really decide, what is best for their STD program in their state and how they're going to be most effective. And I think NCSD can probably assist in that by looking at states, and I would imagine the project areas probably, I would guess it would be divided by morbidity as to what's most effective, and maybe help facilitate some opportunities like this for low, medium, and high morbidity areas to discuss, what's been effective and what works, and what direction their DIS are headed, and very similar to this call, just to kind of give everybody a chance to throw around ideas and see mix and what sounds good.
Okay, and I'll second most of that. In terms of the direction I see DIS heading, it's I just keep looking at the challenges of how to integrate new technologies, new techniques, new interventions without losing the core public health benefit of traditional partner notification. And I too don't know how our DIS keep going on. We keep handing them more and more to do, and they just do it. I think for many of the DIS that I've known over the past 20-odd years, I think we're all just kind of a special breed of person and a little bit out on the fringes anyway. And I think, though, the common denominator is that I see is that DIS just have this internal sense of mission, that they're doing the good work because they don't traditionally have not gotten pats on the back by the systems they work for. They don't necessarily get pats on the back by the clients that they serve. And so the only thing I can come up with is there's just that internal sense of mission, and that they know they're doing right by people. As far as what NCSD can do, I think we can explore more continue working on building up DIS Recognition Day and events, and promoting DIS in terms of their national reputation and making it obvious how much we value DIS, and that there would be no. Well, Gail said it once that DIS are the public health infrastructure, and I think we need to let DIS know that we recognize that, and that none of this would happen without the DIS in the field. And but I would like to see us sponsor some kind of national networking, or giving DIS kind of a base from which to develop their own network.
Okay, that sounds like a great idea, Donna. Thank you all. Any last burning questions from the field? Any last questions, anyone?
One more question. This is Kelly from Michigan. I was just curious, we were talking about referring co-infects to a social worker. What kind of success rate have you had with that?
Well, to be real honest, we just started that process before. Like I said, the DIS always did it, and I can tell you our success rate was non-existent. I mean, if we had people who we saw twice, we saw them 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, which is one of the reasons that we decided maybe the social worker was a better idea, because we were clearly not having the effect on them that we wanted to have on them. I mean, we had one gentleman that I recall vividly that one of my DIS has visited with no less than 10 times, who keeps getting named in HIV investigations, and he's previously positive. So that was kind of the catalyst, I think, that we evaluated what we did and said, nope, that's not working. So we just made that switch over to CRCS. So ask me in a year, and I can probably tell you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, anyone else? Thank you so much, Donna. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you all for your interest. Please remember the evaluation is coming. Please take a minute to fill it out. Have any topics that you're interested in, please let me know. This call has been recorded, so those of you who have missed some of it, you can retrieve it from our website. Thank you all, and see you next time.
Thanks, Dana.
Bye.
Thanks, Dana.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Please stand by.